It was just after 11 p.m. when I clocked out of work and stepped into the quiet night. The air was cool, still, and heavy, and that way it always seemed at the end of a long shift. My drive home was a familiar one, about 45 minutes outside the city, through stretches of winding roads that gradually bled into deep countryside. The farther I got from the bustle, the quieter everything became. By the time I hit the outskirts, traffic had thinned to nothing, and I was usually alone on the road. I never minded those late-night drives. In fact, I often found them comforting. There was something peaceful about cruising through the darkness after a long, exhausting day. The hum of the tires on asphalt, the steady rhythm of the engine, the solitude. It gave me time to think, to breathe, and to shake off the weight of work before I reached the silence of my house. That night, I was about 20 minutes from home when I turned onto a long side road that led straight to my place. I'd taken it countless times, and nothing unusual had ever happened before. Still, there was always something unsettling about it after dark. The road was narrow, flanked by thick woods that pressed in close on either side. Street lights were sparse, their weak yellow glow barely cutting through the blackness. On nights like this, fog hung low over the ground, rolling out from the trees and swallowing everything beyond a few feet in front of me. The atmosphere was eerie, but I'd grown used to it. That stretch of road was mine alone most nights, and with no sharp turns or intersections, visibility was never much of a problem. I let myself relax, settling into the steady rhythm of the drive. Then, through the fog, I noticed it. A small, blinking light ahead. At first, I couldn't tell where it was, or even what side of the road it was on. It flickered faintly, like a weak signal in the distance. I slowed down, squinting through the haze. A few seconds later, the light vanished completely. Something about that unsettled me. My speed dropped to 15, maybe 20 miles per hour as I strained to see through the fog. That's when it happened. Out of nowhere, a small car pulled out from the side of the road and stopped directly in front of me. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. My front bumper tapped against the back of their car with a dull thud. The impact wasn't hard, just enough to jolt me. Still, I sat there in shock, my heart hammering from how suddenly it all happened. When I realized neither car had taken real damage, I climbed out, figuring out exchange a few words with the other driver. Standing beside my car, I waited for them to step out as well. I could see movement inside, shadows shifting in the front seat, but they didn't get out right away. Their vehicle looked old, beaten down, its paint dull and its headlights completely off. Eventually, the driver's door creaked open and a man stepped out slowly. He was middle-aged, heavy-set, and taller than I expected. As he walked toward me, something about the way he moved set me on edge.
I tried to break the tension with a polite start. "Everything okay? You pulled out pretty quick." He didn't answer right away. His eyes darted around, never meeting mine. He looked nervous, maybe something else I couldn't quite place. After a long pause, he muttered, "Yeah, sorry." That was it. Nothing more. The longer I stood there, the more uncomfortable I felt. The road was deserted, swallowed in fog and silence, and I didn't like being alone out there with him. I told him there wasn't much damage to either car and that I was going to head home. I turned toward my door, but he stopped me with a quick, "Wait." He said he wanted to check his car for damage before I left. I hesitated, then agreed, leaning against my car as he examined his rear bunker. But instead of staying there, he began circling the entire car slowly, pretending to look for scratches. It didn't make sense. I had barely tapped his back bumper. As he moved toward the passenger side, something caught my eye. From the back seat, a figure rose. At first, it was just a shape. But then the door cracked open, and I realized another man had been hiding back there. Ice shot through my veins. Without thinking, I yanked open my own door, dove inside, and hit the lock. By the time I started the engine, the second man had stepped out, joining the first. Both of them waved their arms, shouted, telling me to stop. I didn't. My hands shook as I slammed the car into drive, swerved around him, and tore down the road. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, heart pounding. Through the fog, their headlights flared to life. For 30 seconds, I could see them trailing me, their beams cutting through the mist. Then, just as suddenly, the lights disappeared. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I pulled into a gas station about 5 minutes from my house and parked under the fluorescent glow. My chest still heaved as I waited, scanning the road for their car. 15 minutes passed, nothing. Finally, I drove the rest of the way home. That night, I didn't call the cops. At the time, I convinced myself I might have been overreacting. Maybe it wasn't what I thought it was. Maybe they were harmless. But as the days passed, the unease grew. The way the first man acted, the sudden appearance of the second man, it all felt wrong. Too wrong to be coincidence. The more I think about it, the more certain I am that something dangerous was about to happen. If I hadn't trusted my instincts and gotten back in my car, I don't know what they would have tried. Part of me wishes I had reported the incident, because sometimes late at night I wonder, what if they weren't done? What if they gave up on me only to wait for someone else? Someone who might not have been as quick to leave.
I used to work for a small trucking company that specialized in delivering frozen products to grocery stores across several states. Most of the time, the routine was predictable. 3 or 4 deliveries in a day, back to the warehouse, and then finally home. Every once in a while, though, I'd get assigned a longer run. Those deliveries took me so far out that making it back the same night was impossible. On those trips, I'd usually pull into a truck stop, park, and rest for a few hours before finishing the drive home. One night, I was scheduled for one of those longer routes. I left in the morning knowing I wouldn't get back until late the following day. The delivery itself went smoothly. I drove out, dropped off the load, and started heading back. By the time I was on the return leg, it was close to 1 in the morning. The highway was empty, nothing but black stretches of road lined with fields and the occasional shadow of trees. After hours of staring into the dark, my eyes felt heavy. I decided I should stop and rest before pushing on. The last sign I'd seen for a truck stop said 40 miles ahead, so I kept rolling, waiting for the exit. My mind tends to drift when I'm driving long stretches like that, especially in the dead of night with no one else around. That's probably why I almost missed it at first. A flicker in the corner of my eye, a glint in the mirror. I glanced over at my side mirror and noticed headlights. They weren't far off in the distance like a passing car. They were right behind me, so close that the lights disappeared behind the trailer. I couldn't see the vehicle itself, which usually meant it was riding my blind spot, tucked just beneath the edge of my trailer. I expected the driver to change lanes and pass me, but they didn't. They stayed glued to my bumper. Mile after mile, that same pair of headlights lingered in the mirror, unwavering. My irritation grew with every passing second. If I had to hit the brakes for anything, that driver would slam right into me. The truck stop finally appeared on the horizon, its glowing sign promising a short reprieve. I signaled, took the exit, and rolled into the lot. The headlights behind me slowed, then followed me in. My stomach tightened. I pulled into a space, shifted into park, and sat there for a second, watching. The car trailed in slow, creeping closer and closer to the back of my truck before stopping. Once again, they parked so close that I couldn't see the vehicle from my mirrors. My hairs on my arms prickled. Something about it was wrong. I climbed out of the cab, letting the door slam behind me. As soon as I did, the car jolted into reverse. Tires squealed faintly on the asphalt as it sped off toward the exit. I caught only a glimpse as it passed under the dim lights. A white, rusted sedan. Old, battered, with one of those heavy bumper bars like the kind used on police cars decades ago. Behind the wheel, a gray-haired man. He didn't even glance at me as he fled. I stood by the trailer for a few minutes,
checking the locks and making sure everything was secure. My nerves were rattled, but nothing seemed out of place. Satisfied, I climbed back into the cab, shut the engine off, and locked every door. I scanned the lot one more time, then leaned back in the driver's seat, letting exhaustion pull me under.
I don't know how long I was asleep before the noise woke me. A sharp bang echoed through the trailer. My eyes flew open, heart pounding. My watch read just past 3 a.m. Another bang rattled the metal, louder this time, followed by the faint scrape of metal on metal. I froze. Then, slowly, I leaned toward the side mirror. In the faint glow of the parking lot lights, I caught the shape of a figure moving at the back of the truck. My pulse roared in my ears. Reaching into the center console, I pulled out the small knife I always kept stashed there. I eased the driver's door open, leaving it ajar so I wouldn't make noise, and slipped out. The air outside was still, heavy, carrying the faint smell of diesel from nearby rigs. I crept along the side of the trailer, crouching low until I could peer beneath it. That's when I saw him. A man stood flush against the back doors, his outline visible against the faint glow of the lot. Behind him, parked in the shadows with its lights off, was the same rusted white sedan. My chest tightened with fear. I didn't move any closer. Instead, I straightened just enough to yell out, "Hey!" My voice cracked slightly, betraying my nerves, but the reaction was immediate. The man jerked, spun around, and bolted for the car. He jumped inside, the engine roared to life, and the vehicle screeched away into the night. I hurried to the back of the trailer. Deep scratches lined the lock, gouges from some kind of tool. He'd been trying to break in. My stomach twisted at the thought of what might have happened if I hadn't woken up. I scanned the lot for witnesses, hoping another driver might have seen, but the place was nearly deserted. Just a few trucks scattered here and there, their cabs dark, their drivers asleep. For a long moment, I stood there under the harsh glow of the streetlight, gripping the knife tightly and staring down the empty lot. When it was clear the man wasn't coming back, I climbed into the cab, locked the doors again, and turned the engine on. Sleep was no longer an option. The rest of the drive home passed in silence. I didn't see the car again, though I kept checking my mirrors obsessively, expecting those headlights to reappear. They never did. To this day, I assume the man had only wanted to steal from the trailer. What he didn't know was that I'd already unloaded all the goods. The back was completely empty. Maybe that was all it was, just a desperate attempt at theft. But I can't shake the feeling that it could have been worse. Years have passed, but that night still lingers with me. Every time I'm on a long, empty stretch of highway and notice headlights too close behind me, my stomach knots with the same old dread. I know how easily something harmless can turn into something much darker.
Last year, I went to a concert on the south side of Chicago. Anyone familiar with the area knows it's not exactly the safest part of the city. Crime rates are high, and the neighborhoods have a reputation that makes most people think twice before heading there. But the tickets were cheap, and the show was packed with people, so I didn't think much of it. Safety in numbers, right? Plus, I wasn't going alone. I had 2 friends with me. The concert itself was incredible. The energy was high, the crowd was wild, and for those few hours, we weren't thinking about anything outside the venue. But when the final song ended and we spilled back into the parking lot, reality set in. It was close to 10 p.m., and traffic was already a mess. We crawled our way out of the lot and onto the main road, only to realize we weren't going anywhere fast. Cars sat bumper to bumper, moving a few feet at a time before stopping again. We must have sat there for half an hour, barely making progress. That's when one of my friends suggested pulling up the map app on his phone to look for an alternate route. He found one. Some back roads through residential neighborhoods that could bypass the worst of the traffic and get us back toward the highway. We all agreed to try it. At first, it seemed like a good idea. The congestion thinned out as soon as we turned off the main road, and the narrow streets were quiet. Almost too quiet. That's when we started noticing something strange. There were people outside. A lot of them. Men standing on porches, kids on bikes weaving across the street, groups gathered in yards. For almost 10 o'clock at night on a weeknight, it seemed unusual. Where we lived, 2 hours west of the city, neighborhoods would be completely still by that time of night. At first, we brushed it off as just a difference between city life and the suburbs, but then the people started watching us. Every time we passed, heads turned, conversations stopped. Their eyes followed our car until we were out of sight. It was then one of us realized that we hadn't seen another car in almost 20 minutes. No headlights, no taillights, just us navigating deeper into these dark, unfamiliar streets. The tension in the car grew thick. I asked my friend with the map to check how close we were to the next main road. But before he could finish scrolling, our other friend pointed out something ahead. At the end of the street, a car was parked sideways, blocking both lanes. I stopped immediately, staring at the vehicle through the windshield. It was positioned perfectly, leaving no space to pass on either side. No lights were on, and from where we sat, we couldn't tell if anyone was inside. My gut screamed at me not to approach. I shifted into reverse, backed up quickly, and returned to the last street we'd been on. We tried going down a different block, praying we'd find another way out. But less than a minute later, there it was again. Another car parked sideways across the road, sealing off the exit.
The three of us froze. My hands gripped the wheel. None of us said a word at first, just exchanging nervous glances, silently asking the same question, what do we do? Before we could decide, two men emerged from the shadows of a nearby house. One stood at the back of the blocking car, while the other walked straight up to my driver's side window. He gestured for me to roll it down. Against my better judgment, I lowered it just an inch or two. The man leaned in slightly, scanning each of our faces and glancing around the car's interior. His expression was unreadable. Then he asked, "Where you headed?" "Just back to the highway," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. He gave a slow nod, then looked over to his friend, who started making his way toward the passenger side of the car. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. Time seemed to freeze. Then in an instant, both men lunged at the doors. They yanked the handles, trying them again and again. My friend screamed. Instinct took over. I slammed the car into reverse, the tires screeching as we backed up. The man at my window shoved his arm through the small gap, his hand flailing inches from my face. For a split second, he was stuck there, his forearm jammed in the narrow space. But as I kept backing up, he was wrenched free, falling hard onto the pavement. I spun the wheel, floored the gas, and tore back the way we'd come. My chest was tight, my hands trembling as I tried to keep control of the car. None of us said a word for the first few seconds. We were all too shocked, too terrified. When I finally glanced at my friends, their faces were pale, eyes wide. We all knew how close that had been. We agreed immediately, no more detours, no shortcuts. We'd return the same way we'd come, even if it meant sitting in traffic all night. I got us back onto the main road, and for the first time in an hour, the sight of brake lights and crowded lanes felt like a blessing. The rest of the drive was silent. I tried to keep calm, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking, and my mind replayed the man's arm wedged through the window over and over. Looking back now, I don't know what those men had planned, but I know it wasn't good. Maybe it was a robbery, maybe worse. What I do know is that if our doors hadn't been locked, if we hesitated even a second longer, things could have ended very differently. I've been to plenty of concerts since then, but I'll never forget that night. And I'll never again assume that a crowded event means safety, because sometimes danger waits just a few blocks away.